Joining me now is comedian and host of Prime Time with Alex Stein on Blaze TV, the incorrigible Texan himself. Alex, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Let's start with the border crisis. Millions have crossed the southern border illegally during Biden's term in the White House, more than 2 million a year. And of course, those enormous numbers are naturally going to include some criminals. Earlier this month, we learned that on a single day, Border Patrol agents stopped 4 sex offenders, and we're talking here about criminals with convictions, including crimes against children. 4 caught in one day attempting to cross into the US illegally. How is the border crisis, the fact that you have literally millions crossing illegally, not a bigger issue in the US?
Well, Rita, it's a huge issue. It's happening here. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and we're really affected by it. And where it's really bad is the drugs that are coming through and the sex trafficking. And, people don't want to talk about it. These people they're funded by the cartel, which is the most illegal organization in the world. And they actually use coyotes to bring children across our border. They're basically pawns in a huge drug and sex trafficking scheme. So it's incredibly terrible. And there's a 2-tier justice system, because when these illegal immigrants get arrested here in America, they don't face the same sort of criminal justice that I would face. As a matter of fact, they get flown back to their home country and don't have to face any sort of punishment. And they know that. They're not dumb. So if they can come to America and sell drugs or, profit off illegal prostitution of children, they know that they're not going to face any repercussions for their actions.
Well, this is what shocks me. It is, of course, a huge issue. Even in cities like New York, it's causing a problem because illegal immigrants are being bussed in there, so they're having to carry a little bit of the weight. But it's not leading the news at night. It's not front page news, and it should be, because this is an ongoing crisis. It's worth noting that on top of the 2.4 million who were encountered crossing illegally in 2022, there were more than 600,000 getaways on top of that. And again, these are just the observed illegal crossings. Now, let's move along to Republican Larry Elder. He schooled a hypocrite from the left. He appeared on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne Tha God, who had the nerve to question Elder's blackness and whether he needed a wake-up call. Let's have a look at some of the interaction.
Have you ever heard of the term wake-up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother. Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black. We don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that. That should have been a wake-up call on your part, to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. It seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call for you, but it wasn't.
Alex, your reaction to that?
Well, I'm lucky enough to call Larry Elder a friend, and Larry has a great approach when it comes to this. Sadly, here in America, what we do is we encourage people to play the victim. Larry Elder will never play the victim, and hopefully he can shape some young men and teach them that playing the victim is not the way that we should live our lives here in America. And of course, there's marginalized communities. Of course, racism, is a thing that happens. But Larry Elder, preaches that we need to rise above it. And with that just small interaction, he woke up Charlamagne to the real reality that Joe Biden does not care about black people. If he really cared about black people, he'd be helping them, but he doesn't help them at all. And he lies about the help that he does supposedly give them. So, what happens here in America is that the left uses African Americans as a pawn in their political scheme and doesn't actually help them. And, Larry Elder is based in reality. Unlike Charlamagne, who's uneducated and doesn't know a quarter or 1/8 of what Larry Elder knows when it comes to civil rights and civil liberties being trampled on.
And I don't recall Charlamagne making much of a fuss when Larry Elder faced the most horrendous racist abuse from the left when he was having his run in California. There was a woman in a gorilla mask who accosted him as he was walking in the street. Just blatantly racist, ugly attacks. And where were all the folks who are so sensitive to racial issues? They were nowhere to be found, Alex. It really was quite appalling. But I want to bring to your attention something entirely different, a piece in CNN which claims that Republicans are masters of verbal jiu-jitsu. They had a report that said Republicans are masters of verbal jiu-jitsu. It's a form of linguistic combat in which the practitioner takes a political phrase or concept popularised by their opponent and gradually turns it into an unusable slur. Like the Japanese martial art known as jiu-jitsu, its devotees avoid taking opposing arguments head-on and instead redirect their opponent's momentum to beat them. Alex, isn't there a simpler explanation? Don't these phrases become massive jokes because the ideology behind them is just so vacuous and meaningless? After all, it was the left who called themselves social justice warriors. They called themselves woke. They pushed things like critical race theory as something to aspire to. But it's the failure of these words and concepts isn't down to the Republicans playing word games, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, in the term woke it has become a derogatory word, but it should be because it basically is, like you said, it's encouraging an ideology that is not, well, what everybody wants. I know that sounds weird, but I think the dictionary definition of woke is somebody that is speaking out against social injustices. But when in reality, these people are just creating more social injustice. It's like affirmative action, getting rid of it. When you judge everything by sex, race, that is actually racist. So their woke ideology is being turned against them, and they don't have a way to combat it or argue against it because they know how absurd it has become. I mean, you can literally you can go to Google and you can type in, can a man get pregnant? And it says yes. And that is the dictionary definition of woke ideology, when in reality, only a woman can get pregnant. And that's what we're fighting against. Reality and, obviously, I don't even know what to describe, fairy tales. And I think reality will always win against the woke ideology, fairy tale existence that they want to try to, perpetuate.
Well, I think CNN is engaging in a projection here. This is gaslighting, projection, what do you want to call it? Because it's the left who give their projects, give their agenda nice sounding names. Affirmative action you just mentioned there. I mean, you could just call it racism, you could call it discrimination, race-based discrimination, but no, they give it a positive sounding name you couldn't possibly disagree with when the reality is actually quite ugly. And then they call things like Florida's parental rights bill Don't Say Gay, which bears no relation to the actual bill, does not appear in the bill, but that's what the media call it, Alex. So they're the ones who are creating these linguistic jiu-jitsu, if you want to call it, and running with it, and yet they're accusing their opponents of being guilty of that crime.
It's projection, Rita. It's the dictionary definition of projecting. They project exactly what they're doing. And it's from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, is you accuse your opponent of what you're actually doing to throw your opponent off. So this is a game plan that they've had in place for a long time. And sadly, I hate to admit it, I think the left is winning with a lot of their, their narrative is kind of winning in America. People are waking up to it. But because of social justice and people don't want to be rude to marginalized communities, they just go with the flow instead of speaking out.
Alex Stein, thank you so much for joining me. And next time I'm going to play some of your work because I hear you are raising money for that airline lady, the one with the meltdown. What? I
Tiffany
do not understand what you're up to.
You'll see the video, but
she's
we want her to fly private. Rita, we want her to fly private. I don't even know why she's so iconic, but yes, you're going to love this video. You should have saw some of the reactions that we got from people. And of course, she's a joke, but in this world, I've become clown pilled. I think we have to lampoon against the people that are lampooning against us, Rita.
I cannot wait for that vision. I will bring it here. But yeah, of all the things you could be raising money for a private jet for that woman is well, only Alex Stein would do that. Thank you for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Rita.